We still remember the icon elevator speech.
Yeah, was it who created it? Something outside, but that's such small. I'm impressed.
Yes. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody. Thank you all for coming. We're gonna record this discussion so we can post it online and anybody can review it later. But like what you've picked out is the presentation that Midcoast Council of Governments. We have Charlotte and we have Dan here from Midcoast Council of Governments. That's gonna be posted online for those that want to view the PDF copy, as well as this recording. So for those that don't know me, I'm Orion Thomas. I'm the Planning and Development Director for the town of Rockport. We're working on a variety of different projects. One of those is housing. And I thought it'd be great to bring in Midcoast Council of Governments who've been doing a lot of work in the region on housing to know a lot more about the data side of it to help keep these conversations going. So that.
So my name's Charlotte. I'm the GIS and that's the mapping and data specialist for Midcoast Council of Governments.
I'm Dan. I'm a regional planner with MCOG and mostly focus on Knox County. As part of that, I'm also the town planner for the town of Warren next door. So I work in and around the area quite a bit. But yeah, good to go to the next one. Right?
All right.
Maybe.
Here we go.
Oh, hello. So we're gonna just because of our nature, we'll try to keep this fairly informal. If you guys have questions throughout, let us know. We'll try our best to answer them. But we are going to start out a little bit with just talking about why we're here. Charlotte's got a long data presentation for you guys. Orion's going to go through a little bit of the existing zoning as it currently is in Rockport, what areas may or may not be suitable for housing expansion. And then we'll talk about some funding tools, what you might be able to access as individuals, as homeowners, as prospective homeowners or renters, and what funding tools the town has at their disposal to try to make housing more affordable. And then we're going to open it up to a little bit of a Q&A, and we got some discussion questions for you guys. And if those prompt some other questions, great. Next one. So this is the biggest reason why Orion has asked us to come and speak with you guys, talk about housing. You guys have just finished up your comprehensive plan. And in that, one of the primary issues identified is need for increased housing stock and really housing stock along the whole continuum of, housing that is friendly for older folks as they're aging in place, housing that's friendly for younger folks, new families, young professionals just looking to rent before they own, really housing across the continuum. And some of the issues, one of the leading ones related to expanding affordable housing and workforce housing in the town is addressing the high sewer rates, which if you're on sewer, you're probably experiencing. Next one, please. And so with that, we will turn it over to Charlotte for the data discussion.
Great. So I'll give you a background of what we're going to be talking about with the data. And then we'll jump to it. So I'm going to start off with some background housing and demographic data. The comprehensive plan had a lot of really, really good data in it already. And I just wanted to, highlight a couple main points. From there, we're going to move on to regional housing studies that have been done. And then we're going to explore Rockport's own housing gap analysis that I've done for this talk. It's a bit of, it's a adaptation of other studies. for this town specifically. And then we'll talk about effects of action and inaction based on that analysis, and then we'll summarize. Okay. So just to start off with sort of the most basic housing data there is. This is just a table with some numbers. It's a little dry. We'll get a little more colorful in the next slide, but just to kind of ground Rockport's housing within the context of Knox County. 75% owner occupied in Rockport versus 78% in Knox County. So we're a little more renter friendly in Rockport, which has its benefits. We're mostly single family homes here, 89% versus 79% in Knox County. And then, lower levels of, 2 or more units within the same building. And then 6% mobile homes versus 8% mobile homes in Knox County. Keep in mind, this data is not assessor data. It's not specific. We haven't gone and counted the number of homes. So if you've seen a different number through the assessor data, that's probably more correct. This is from the census, the 1-year census, American Community Survey, but it gives a really good general picture anyways. So moving on. So we're gonna stay with this slide for a little while. This is the Housing Affordability Index. This shows really just it's a picture of the affordability of the different towns in the region. All the towns that you see there are within the Mid-Coast Council of Government. I'm gonna say MCOG region. And you can see Rockport you can see it over there on the coast. So what is the Housing Affordability Index? It comes from Maine Housing, from that organization. It is a ratio of the income that's needed to afford the median house that's sold compared to the actual median income. So say, I'm just going to make up some numbers just for the sake of it. But say the median house that's sold was 300,000 and the income that's needed to afford that is 100,000. And then the actual median income is 50,000, it would be 0.5. So that's where that comes from. So Rockport having an affordability index of 0.79 means that essentially the median income is 79% of what it takes to afford the median home. So in 2016, we can see the green areas, those are more affordable. Numbers above 1 means that they're very affordable, means that the median income is actually more than what's needed to afford the median home. So that's a really positive housing market. It means it's very affordable. So we can see there's a bunch of green, it's a bunch of numbers above 1. Rockport historically has been pretty unaffordable is what we're seeing. We'll shift forward in time. So yeah, next slide. So 2021, the whole region, if the whole region's struggling a little bit more. This is sort of approaching the height of the effects of COVID on our housing market. And we see a lot more red, fairly any towns with numbers above 1 or that are colored in green. Rockport dipped to 59%. And then we've got one more data point in this one, which is 2023, and it's heartbreaking. I actually had to add another color red because it was all off the charts. Rockport's at 0.36%. So people are making a third of what they need to make to afford the median home. So that's a struggle. I will say this, if for any of you who, used to check your teacher's notes, if you go on the Maine Housing website, it looks slightly different. I think they got a new vendor in the last month since I've made this graph. So if you do that, if you look online, which I encourage everyone to look at the data online, it's really interesting. But you might see a slightly different number, and that's okay. The point still stands. We're very, very unaffordable right now. So that's, sort of paints a picture of the housing crisis that we're in. We're gonna get a little happier, but I'm gonna point to another crisis again, which is our aging population. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time, understanding this chart as well. So the columns that you see, those are the years versus the rows are age brackets in 5-year increments from 0 to 85 plus. This whole chart is for the entire Knox County. The data is from the Maine State Economist. They don't produce it for the towns individually, just the county level, but it really, can paint a snapshot for, and give context for Rockland. So what we're seeing, the 2022 is an actual measurement of those people in those age brackets. And then as we shift forward to 2027, 2032, et cetera, those are predictions from the Maine State Economist based on births, deaths, in-migration, out-migration. So we can see in 2022 that 65 to 69 cohort is really the dominant cohort. And our median age is something in Rockport is 46 versus Knox County, it's even older, 49. So they're similar. It's certainly our community is more skewed towards older adults. And so if you follow that cohort, people age into the next age bracket throughout those years. And we can see that by 2042, our most populous age bracket are 85 plus. And that has huge implications for healthcare, for Penn Bay, the hospital, and for home health, and for the workers who would be working in those professions as well. It has implication for transportation, you name it, everything. And it comes with a strength too. I think it's really important to not overlook that population has such a wealth of knowledge as well. And so it's really, really wonderful to support these people in our communities and help them age in place. But it's indicative of an overall, unhealthy community as an overall population. So with that, we're going to get into some regional housing studies. The first one is the Maine State Housing Production Needs Study from 2023. That's the study that said, we need 80,000 houses by 2030. I think those are the right numbers. Have people seen this on the news or heard it? Yeah, raise your hand. I'm just curious if people, okay, great. So a good number of people. Awesome. So in that study, they said, our total historic, they call it historic underproduction. That means our current shortage. This was produced in 2023. They were using 2021 data. So, we saw in 2021 that affordability index was pretty dire, and then it dipped even more. So I would say we're at this point in an even greater historic underproduction, but they say for the coastal region is 20,000 units. That's from York to Hancock County. And then they broke it down. I just wanted to show they broke it down by income as well for that availability deficit. It's a really neat study. You can find it online as well. If you're a data nerd like me, totally go check it out. So we thought that this was really interesting. And since that coastal region was so big, we wanted to examine it at the scale that we thought would be really useful for towns. And so we looked at it through the lens of the whole Mid-Coast region. And I pulled out just the Rockland Camden. LMA stands for labor market area. So that's a geographic area that is, kind of economically cohesive. It's basically where people live and work. And it's kind of similar to the county, but they do the data analysis every 10 years and then reconfigure it. So that chart is from our most recent analysis. This is actually a sneak peek. It's not published yet. So you're getting some early data from it. But the red line are homeowners and the blue line are renters. And this is the numbers on the y-axis are the actual housing shortage that we need for each of those income brackets on the x-axis. And you can, the data, it spits out a number and you have to look at it broadly. You have to say, okay, we have basically what I'm seeing here is for renters, we have a huge need at lower levels of income. Same for homeowners. And then we see that spike at the 100 to 150K homeowners. That's really the double income median household, median earner household. So it really, kind of just paints a picture broadly of what what units we need. So using that, we can go to the next slide. I've distilled it down to Rockport's portion of that. So it's essentially what is, the proportion that of those units for the Rockland Camden LMA that should be allocated to Rockport. And then I went ahead and distributed it to income. And there's a couple ways of doing this. Data analysis, it can kind of point to the truth, but it doesn't say the whole truth without your, own analysis of your town and the whole situation. So our total current shortage for Rockport is 50 to 100 units. That's, what we're short right now. Breaking it up broadly into sort of, low income, median income, and high income homes. We're going to pay attention to this graph on the left here, the top one. Under 60K is roughly 80% area median income, with the Knox County household median income being 72K. If you look at, if you know a lot about housing and you look at HUD and the area median incomes, they break it up by family, size, etc. And for simplicity's sake, we don't do that just because it cuts it into so many pieces. So we're just calling, 60% or 60K, 80% AMI, 60 to 100K is 80 to 150. So that's middle income, and then greater than 150 AMI, which is 100K. So this is just if we took those 50 to 100 units and kind of put it on the income curve that makes up Rockport. So we see, kind of a medium need at the lower levels of income, a need but somewhat less at median income, and then a greater need at the higher levels of income. And that sort of makes sense. But remember, our housing affordability index right now is people are making a third of what it takes to afford the median home. So you really need to take that into account. And so doing the math, I'm happy to explain the math later. I'll be honest, it's a little bit dry, so I'm not going to get into it right now, but I'm happy to talk through it one-on-one. But if you take into account the affordability index, we see a huge need at the lower levels of income. And so, like I said, data can sort of point to the truth, but you really have to understand the context. And I sort of, I think we all agree that the truth lies, somewhere in the middle of those graphs. And so I did a whole bunch of math and did a whole bunch of analysis to basically say that we need housing for everybody. And that's what we thought, right? So it's, in a way, it's nice when the data goes along with your intuition. So that's the sum of it. Total shortage 50 to 100 units, and really for all incomes. Next slide. So kind of to summarize, give a couple more numbers. Current shortage, we've been through that. Seasonal homes. There's a significant number of seasonal homes in this community and in most coastal Maine communities. I grew up in Booth Bay. It's no different there. Roughly 25% of the houses here are seasonal homes. And so if you build 100 units, we recommend building another 25 units to account for the ones that will be taken for seasonal homes. And they're a really important part of the community as well, the seasonal, the people who live here seasonally. So it's important to, take that into consideration. If you do something like a deed restriction, then maybe we play with those numbers a little differently, but I think it's really important to take that into account. And then for the future need, so we said 50 to 100 units, that's our current shortage. And then for the future need, there's a couple ways of calculating this, and so I went with a pretty big range here, but it's 40 to 115 units. So total units by 2032 is 105 to 240 units. So this isn't a ton of new housing to really make a big difference in this community. That's 15 to 35 units per year. So, we'll go to the next slide. So this is from earlier, this is the chart from the Knox County aging population, but I've scaled it into Rockport. So those are Rockport, that's the total population on the bottom. And so instead of the Knox County being roughly 40K people, this is just scaled to Rockport. And I wanted to show, this is the current path that we're on roughly. And I wanted to show how it would change if we injected those homes into the community that were for family housing specifically. So targeting, assuming people who moved into those houses, I called it 200 houses because that's kind of in the middle of the, 100 to 240 range. 3 people per house, and call it, young families. So they're age, children and 30 to 50. So we can go to the next slide. And we can see the effects of building those homes and what our community could look like. If we, built the 200 homes with roughly 3 people per home for those age brackets. This is just one scenario. This is, it's unlikely it's going to happen exactly like this, but it's important to sort of understand the ways in which we can support the community in really diversifying. And we're not pushing people out of the community. I wanted to point out, we're adding. And so I think this has a ton of implications. We can go to the next slide. So, we've seen we need housing for all income levels, for various ages. People 85 plus also need, they need sort of their end of life homes. They're, 1-story homes that are accessible to them. We need to keep into account seasonal homes, and we need to think about owners versus renters. So what housing Rockport builds and where they build it will immensely shape the town. And there's a lot of other considerations that are all wrapped up in this. It's not just housing that we're talking about. If we're talking about building family housing, we also have to talk about daycare and schools. We need to talk about transportation and, where these houses are, their walkability, the green space. I mean, we're all Mainers. And so we interact with the community, we interact with each other, we interact with the outdoors. And so how do we build our housing in a way that preserves our community culture as well? And we need to think about new businesses. With new people coming in, there's new ideas, and that's exciting. And there's many others, so that concludes the data portion. But I hope that sets the stage for discussion. Yeah.
You're not considering, you haven't considered apparently, short-term rentals. The growth in those and the effect that they have on taking housing out of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have access to that kind of data that you can project the rise of short-term rentals over the next 30 years also?
I don't have data that projects the rise of short-term rentals. However, it is correlated to the seasonal homes because a lot of the seasonal homes are also used as short-term rentals when people aren't there. Say they, can only come up for a couple weeks every summer, then they might rent their home out seasonal, to they might list it on Airbnb after that. I do have Airbnb data. I found generally it's not as significant of a housing burden as seasonal homes. That's a broad statement. But I tend to look at seasonal homes rather than short-term rentals. But we have that data on our website as well. So feel free, it's an important consideration. It really is. So yeah, feel free to have a look at it.
So you think that seasonal homes are rising at a faster rate than homes are being converted to short-term rentals?
I'm not sure about the rise. I'm not sure about the change. I just don't have that
The
data.
last time I looked, about 20% of the homes sold in Maine last year were sold to investment companies, not to people who wanted to live in them.
Mhm.
Those are all going to be short-term, majority of them are going to be short-term rentals.
Mhm.
So it boggles my mind to think that seasonal homes are more important.
I'm not saying they're more important. I'm saying that from a data perspective, they overlap so much with the short-term rentals and they account for such a large portion of the housing that I tend to look at seasonal homes as that metric for part-time use. But it is a really important topic. Again, we're just scraping the surface of the data.
Yep.
And so it is a really, really important topic and we have more information on our website too. Yeah. Yeah, in the back.
Kind of breezed over slide number 4, I think it is, the effect of action and inaction and the trajectory of new housing for families. You kind of breezed over that slide or these charts.
Okay.
Could you maybe spend a little bit more time explaining? It seems to me it's like slide number 4. The effects of action and inaction.
Yeah, well, yeah.
There's another slide.
Yeah,
It seems like this is a really important slide here.
Mm.
That, you kind of breezed over it. And I think maybe a little bit more detail about what this is showing for us, because the inaction thing and the action thing make a big difference in those the darker purple zones. If you can also explain what we're looking at with the colors.
yeah, okay, so the columns are the years, and then the rows are the age brackets. And the numbers in each of the cells are the number of people in that age bracket for that year. And the darker the color, the more people in that category, in the age bracket for the year. So,
What I'm noticing though,
Mhm.
which is, I think, an important fact that the current trajectory and the trajectory for new housing for families shows a lot more growth of people in that middle age bracket of the 30, you see a lot of those brackets, the numbers go down,
Mhm.
which is not healthy for us, for any community. The numbers
Yeah.
in the 30 to 34 group start to go up, the 35 to 39 group, they start to go up. There's growth of population there in those age groups. Because the first one, the only age group that gets any growth, that continues to grow, is old people like me. And, I'm gonna need a lot of care, I'm gonna need a lot, I'm not gonna be generating positive influence in the community. It's younger people that need to be here and stay here. And that second screen shows that.
Yeah, so this was a model that I did specifically for Rockport to, add in the 200 homes that are targeted towards families. So family homes are typically bigger, so I called it, 300 or 600 people the population of occupying those 200 homes are 600, so 3 per home. And then we put it into the 2027 and 2032 slots. Those years. So we added the people between the ages of 30 and 45 and 0 and 14 for 2027. And then those people age through the years and presumably stay. I did not do as robust a calculation as the Maine state economist could do, with, extra births and deaths, in migration, out migration. I just said, okay, here they have this prediction of, the age brackets through the years. And what would happen if we built 200 homes for families? And this, you're right, that graph on the left shows a much more balanced community than our current trajectory, which is the graph on the right, where the highest age bracket or the most populous age bracket is 85 plus. And so that's the goal of these housing studies, is to inform communities of possible, outcomes of building housing. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I think you just need a little more detail in it. Thank you.
No, I'm happy to help. I saw this here first.
On the same questions on this chart, do you show that that's the impact of putting the 200 houses in 2027? Or is that slowly putting them in across the years? And then if you did the 2027 200 houses, and then you kept an initiative of keeping another 10% of that going consistently, is that what that's showing, or is it just one?
So I did it a couple ways, and the graph didn't look any different. From your eyes, it didn't look different from the 2027 to 2032. So I just put them in 2027. I did not add extra, each year. I just wanted to do that one. When you're modeling, it's good to make it as simple as possible. So I'm telling you, this is not exactly the path that the town is going to go on. But it shows what would happen to the town. So,
And that's, if we
Yeah.
kept that initiative beyond 2027 and 2032, this would paint a better picture.
yeah, Exactly.
It looks better.
Kept up with smaller
Yeah.
scale,
yes,
then
Yep.
it's still even bigger.
exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to get at. Yeah.
I guess same thing. New housing for families.
Mhm.
Is that physical characteristics of the house, or is this assumption the houses will be built such that both families will buy them?
It's both.
Okay.
It's everything. Yep.
But, did your analysis start out, say, okay, well, if you have a housing stock with certain distribution of sizes, number of bedrooms, et cetera, that those would what people would be, or did you sort of lay that aside and say, we'll come up with a mix, somebody will come up with this mix such that it looks, from looking at the data you presented, it looks more like you made the assumption that the housing mix would be such that it would be appealing to these
Yes,
families.
that's the assumption. So,
Okay.
so we're just getting into, what would happen if,
Okay, got that now.
okay.
Now, my question is, when I look at the increase in population,
Mhm.
it's very concentrated in kind of in 2027, et cetera, in a certain cohort. And yet I would expect that a house that is with physical characteristics, location, walking, et cetera, that is appealing to a family group could also have a lot of appeal to maybe a little bit older population with not children at home, the retirees, et cetera. You can have a lot of people looking to retire soon and move to the area, such that you get a lot of people in the 50s and 60s would be also buying these quote family houses because, gee, it's a size, so that the impact of adding the 200 quote family homes would be more widely distributed across the age bracket than your assumption that somehow the houses magically only are purchased by people within a certain age cohort.
And that's part of why earlier when Charlotte was presenting, she mentioned, that, we have the assumption of units needed and that we should probably actually be taking that 25% further
Yeah.
than the assumption, because we're again taking an assumption that 25% roughly is going to be bought up by seasonal or non-familial housing groups.
Understand, it just
Yeah.
seemed like this is, the type of thing I hear sometimes I'm saying is it's like, gee, if we could make this happen, this is the things that would flow out. But it can be a little bit of an optimistic view of exactly how carefully you can control what would happen.
So, well, design would have to have stairs and no first floor bedroom.
No, I completely understand that, and I think I gave the caveat that this is, a hypothetical outcome. And it's not, we're not going to build housing exactly like this. That's not going to be the case. I did 3 people per household so that it was family heavy, but if there's a family with 2 kids, that's offset by a family with no kids. So it's,
Or 6.
or, yeah, right? Yeah.
Sorry. I did have a question. When you're trying to figure out shortages in the town of Rockport,
Mhm.
is this based on people that are required to work in the town of Rockport? So therefore they couldn't live in Lincolnville or Warren or West, and do commuting? Or I'm trying to figure out how we come up with some of these things. And when you talk about, living on $1 million or $6 million house on the water, I mean, any local town has the same issues.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. So how do you come up with, well, we have this gap of housing, is it based on people who are actually required to live in the town in order to work?
It's not based on people who work in the town. It's more based on,
They
people
want,
who live here.
it's
Yeah.
a want versus a requirement.
Yeah, and I have a detailed methodology on our website as well. So that goes into kind of the nitty gritty of it. So, yeah, I think I said it.
While we're on the topic of population,
Yeah,
it's a little bit off topic of housing specifically, but I think it would be helpful maybe as the time goes down the road, here, but to look at what the effects would be on the town budget if we increase population as far as decreasing property taxes across the board for people under different scenarios, right? Obviously, for younger families coming in without fixed incomes might have a better ability to help burden the property tax versus, having a heavily fixed income sort of population. And that could be modeled at various differing growth rates for the budget, right? Each year and seeing like, okay, this will be impacted by X. I think it'll be a really important statistic to show as we're trying to make this argument.
right. And if X percentage of them are new business owners, and then that adds to the commercial side of the tax base as
And I
well.
think, another point too is we need to build more commercial property because that also will increase the tax base, right? That's part of the story that's just not being told anywhere right now, and how we do economic development and how we grow pie. It's all been focused on housing and let's reduce expense, but it's very hard to do. Let's increase revenues, and let's think of ways to do that, so.
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting, just sort of across the board, to look at, okay, new population coming into town. The pressures on the tax base are up and down across the board for a number of different reasons. It's a negative in the sense that you have additional school budget, students per, cost per pupil, that's going up. It's a positive in that you have growth in your property valuation. And so it's an interesting, kind of number to play with as far as impact in both directions.
I mean, on that subject, we know right now our elementary school enrollment is down 40–50%. And if that trend continues, we have these assets that are already built that are now have to still be maintained, but at a lower contribution rate, right? So we need more families to be able to move in order just to support the school properties that we have. And that's not even talking about expanding, right?
That's why you see several schools closing
Yeah.
in the surrounding region.
It's a very, very real threat to have schools closed. It's really scary. So, yeah.
And if you look at your numbers on the right, and you look at the 5 to 19, the numbers are all decreasing. And it follows the trend in the elementary school. And so the need for these increases in schools is going to evaporate. The other point is you have some scary numbers up there regarding the housing affordability index over the last 9 years. And with this scenario on the right, have you been able to project what this housing affordability index is going to continue to do? Because it doesn't look like there's a blip. It looks like there's a downward trend that's not improving. Have you been able to project that and see what that index could be using these?
That's a really, really good question. And I wish I was smart enough to do that. It's a really complicated, that would be a really complicated analysis. I can tell you that the affordability index is so low because of an issue with supply and demand. There's demand and there's not enough supply, which drives up housing prices. Meanwhile, wages, salaries are not keeping pace with that. The housing market is really difficult in the sense that it's hard to make housing prices actually go down. But if you provide enough housing that you no longer have an issue of supply and demand, that makes steps towards correcting that affordability issue.
There's also a dislocation in the types of buyers who are coming there, because
Yeah.
you have a lot of retirees.
Yeah.
They're now worried about their income keeping up with it. They're all cash buyers, they're retiring, and that skewed the entire market as well.
Yeah. Mhm. And if you leave one last thing on that, if you leave the market to, kind of correct itself, it doesn't. It continues this gap. So, yeah.
So some of the affordability, especially in the, I can speak for myself and for the town of Rockport, is all the things, it's great if you can help somebody get a house, but they not necessarily can keep it. Between the two consecutive evaluations, 2 years in a row, for tax basis. The water bill, to which I use 21 gallons of water per quarter, or, when not there, but $78 goes to the town, or $72.86, just for the pleasure of having a meter in the house. Insurance, health, car and houses. My insurance, everybody's insurance has gone up. If you were a landlord, your housing insurance in the last decade is practically quadrupled. So when someone says, oh, I can't afford a rent because of this, well, that monthly monies that you have to maintain and own that particular property has skyrocketed so much that you're looking at $800 or $1,000 a month per year, all the way around. So you've got to be somewhere in order to plan ahead so you can get the roof done, to change the windows, fix the door, fix the drywall, all of these kind of things. And everybody talks about affordability, but they don't talk about the affordability of ownership. And a lot of those houses in Rockland and a bunch in Rockport were multi-family homes for a long time and were all rented. And my great uncle would go every week to collect his rent at those homes. And today they consistently become single homes. Those big places are now not duplexes anymore. They're not quadplexes anymore. They're single homes. They're not apartments where, brownstones, each boy had family. So those are the changes and we didn't have to have internet. Cell phones.
Right.
So all these additional costs a month.
It's true. And the affordability index really takes into account home price, not insurance, et cetera. So what we're seeing is sort of, the low end of the estimate of the burden of housing costs.
And that's, Maine is different from some states. Some of the southern states have certain equalizing legislation in place as far as tax rates or property tax rates being higher for seasonal or non-primary homeowners. That's something that has been, and I'm sure will continue to be a conversation. And at the state legislature level, should there, should mill rates continue to be a flat tax rate, or should they be a progressive tax? It's a good question. And we will get into some bits on home maintenance affordability.
Yeah.
Later in the presentation.
Sure, so we'll move on.
Yeah.
Next step. Pull up. Zoning map, if I can get this thing there.
And so the next section we're going over as Orion's getting it ready, he is gonna give you kind of the lay of the land, as far as what the existing zoning conditions are. We're gonna try to be optimistic, going from painting the picture for us to
Yeah.
how can we maybe solve it?
Yeah, well, one, thank you for the data presentation. It was really nice to see. And thank you to the town for working with the various committees that I've been working with on reducing a lot of the restrictions that we have had in place on zoning. So just to kind of give you the overview, if you haven't seen it, this is our land use zoning map. This kind of sets the tone of where development's going to be. Just to kind of paint the picture along Route 1 and 90, you'll see yellow blotches and green blotches. That's our 906 and 907. Those are the more progressive zoning allotments. So there's more that you can do, more density is allowed. And then in the downtown village area, the historic village area, which is kind of where we're at here, that one's one of the denser areas as well. So a lot of that covers around sewer access. So it wouldn't make much sense to, and you know, we have it along Route 90, we don't have a lot of sewer out there. There's talk of potentially bringing sewer out there, but until it does, we just have zoning or building opportunities that sit idle that can't meet its full potential. So when we go through and make zoning changes or zoning suggestion changes on the map, one of those considerations is how is the sewer access? How is the accessibility of sewer? If it's not likely that sewer is going to come there, then it wouldn't make any sense to zone it to be very dense. So working with the zoning of what it once was, the 907 zone used to have, I think it was 3 different zones within it. We consolidated that into one, and then 906 had 2. We consolidated that into one, just for ease of simplicity of understanding. And then the zoning minimum lot sizes, we're down to 3,000 square feet for a lot, which is some say that's small here in the downtown area. That's pretty common. We did a whole exercise showing how many lots are smaller than 3,000 square feet, and it's a substantial portion of them. So it's aligned with what currently exists, and it makes a few of the lots that were non-compliant or non-conforming conforming, so they could do something else with it if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
For the public here, can you explain why higher density is allowed in sewer versus not?
Higher density allows sewer versus not.
Why higher density is allowed when there's sewer versus when there's not?
Yeah, sure. So if you wanted to do any development, you're gonna need some sewage treatment of some kind. So septic systems, that's 15,000 square feet is the minimum lot size that you would need based on the state law. We can't change that. That's what the state is. And so, and there's a couple of provisions within that if you do a different style of development, but for the most part, 15,000 square feet. So with sewer, you're allowed to have a smaller lot size density. Did that answer your?
Yeah, I think it was more.
You're just good for the crowd, yeah.
And I think you answered then my next question, which would have been, why can't we look at doing other ways of not having sewer, but different sanitary sewer treatments? But it sounds like the state regulates that, and so that needs to be changed at the state level.
Right, so the state has the full regulation on septic systems. There's a couple of provisions on how that can exist. I see a couple of professionals in the field that know a little bit more about that than I do, but if they want to speak on it, you're more than welcome to. But for the most part, the state does that entire regulation. We have to uphold what the state says. So.
And there are a couple creative solutions that a town could pursue. You see it to some degree in business parks that aren't centrally located next to on a sewer line. You could do package plants. It's more common in Europe.
You see a package?
Yeah.
Package plan?
the package plant, but by and large. It's basically like a mini sewer system. A single lot or grouping of lots sewer system. It's
Where do we go to find out?
get up online, Google. So,
Package system?
yeah, a package plant is kind of a common term for it, but it's a different kind of septic tank, septic field system. Basically that can handle larger, somewhere between a sewer system and a.
Or if you have a small community, let's say there's 10 houses or 15 or 20 houses
Yeah.
in an area that's like out rurally, but then there's a community that can handle that.
But our town, or our town, building code doesn't allow for that,
Yes.
right?
Doesn't allow for that style of development?
Yes. And I think what would be helpful is to know, like, is there a solution to use one of these package plants that would allow higher density?
There is. So you could take advantage of the density with a system like that. It's just more of the issues with what the state will allow you to do. So if you can present that, fine, as long as you can treat it,
Yeah,
fine.
got it.
You have to be able to present it as an actual realistic viable alternative to a sewer system or a single lot
Got it.
subsurface wastewater septic system.
You can also put, I mean, we have a property, we have 10, units on one septic system. So you can also do a very large septic system.
So another item, that I'm gonna bring up, it's from our comprehensive plan. And, this is our growth area. So I don't know how well it's showing up on that side. Can you see it? Yeah, okay, great. So that pretty much covers the zoning area with a little exception, and it protects the 908 rural zone. So throughout our comprehensive plan, it was very evident that the community wanted to preserve its rural aspect, but they were acceptable to allowing more to happen within the existing zone. So what does this mean? This means pretty much we're gonna work within that bubble to try to find other ways to increase density. And then outside of that bubble is kind of a no-go zone. So if that makes any sense. For like dense development, I see you have an eyebrow raised, but. Okay. And if you haven't found our comprehensive plan, it's on our website. It's worth a read. It's newly adopted, and we have a few members of the comprehensive implementation committee here tonight, but they're going to go forward and work on implementing that. So it's all a couple of hands. Start back here, and then we'll go.
I see the green goes all the way up to the coastal area, and I know that every few months we have a meeting about how we're going to protect our coastline.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that that is all taken in
Oh, yeah.
into consideration, and also if we will be using houses with the coast. I don't know how much our coastal is being.
I think that's probably too deep of a
Okay.
conversation right now.
No,
I just know that's within the, so it's a zone that allows more density than the 908. That's why it was placed within the growth zone.
okay, and it's okay, yeah, just goes right up to the shore and that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it just has to conform with state shoreline zoning law.
Hold on, David, we got a question here and then we'll go to you.
Do you want to talk just briefly about how the importance of this growth area designation in light of, I think it's LD 1829 that was passed this year?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So we have LD 2003, which the town already incorporated. And then 1829 was basically an amendment to LD 2003. And so what those are, if you don't know, was the state saying you're going to increase your density. Find a way to make it work. So what the town did is we took that and we incorporated it into the planned unit development of our land use ordinance. We created a planned unit development ordinance. We took their provisions, their density, and we plugged it in there. We said, if you wanted to take advantage of the state's legislation, you can do so through this method. And then 1829, the only amendment we had to make on it was adding a story of height for affordable housing. So if someone wanted to take advantage of the density, they could go and increase the height by 1 story, but they'd have to conform to our ordinance. So that's my overview. Do you have any specific questions on it?
Not really,
Okay.
just broadly what it talks about in terms of like what becomes almost automatically permitted within growth areas, because it's tied to
So,
It's tied to the town, so towns still have the ability to do what they want and designate growth areas.
so
But
what
then
we
once you
did,
designate it 1829,
Yeah.
it has a little more.
All right,
So-
I think it's important to point out, this is a comprehensive plan growth area. There's absolutely nothing, zero, nada, changed about zoning, what you can build, et cetera, as a result of the comprehensive plan designating this as a growth area. This is more of an objective. It says where things can happen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
you're a little wrong. And only in that, this growth area is what the town has said, this is where we want to focus our growth.
correct.
Okay.
That's the point. That was my point. It
So,
provides objectives as to where the town focuses. It's not with, okay, this is a growth area. Now that changed, that did not automatically result in the change of a zoning area, any zoning requirements, et cetera. It just said that.
I see where you're at. I see where you're at. Okay, so the basics of the zone that's underneath this growth area, no, that doesn't change. Its density is its density. What the legislation does is you can do 2.5 times the density bonus if you agree to the affordable housing provisions within that. And we had some stipulations within it, so.
But I was on the comprehensive plan. I know there were there was some rumors at times that, the comprehensive plan automatically changes things. It's a plan, it doesn't change things. I just wanted everybody to understand. So for instance, the shoreline issue. There's state law that says this is what restrictions on what you can do on shoreline. So those don't get overridden. They still stay in effect. We're not gonna see people bulldozing, clearing trees and putting up condos on the shoreline because it's a growth area. It doesn't do that at all.
So one of the major impacts for a lot of towns, not so much for Rockport, because you already have the pretty dense zoning in, in areas where there's water and sewer, that LD 1829 applies to growth areas. It also applies to areas in the town that have water and sewer. And it makes the minimum lot size requirement no greater than 3,000 square feet.
That was the other item. We tied it to access to sewer, public sewer. So it has to be within public sewer, it has to be within the gross.
But farther than most towns, which is
Yeah.
why when 1829 came out, it doesn't really make a difference except for the height. But
That was the
in
whole-
other towns, that 1829 is gonna have.
So to give you an example, I work in Warren, a lot different zoning, at this point, hopefully not in the future, but, for Warren in their downtown district, even if you have water and sewer right now, minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet. So that state legislation knocks 17,000 square feet off of that. Makes a big difference. Similarly, it really, the 3,000 or 4,000 square foot realm actually looks more like what the existing downtown village area looks like anyway. What it has been thus far there in Warren in the village area is just like 85% of the lots are non-conforming.
We're not currently yet in compliance with LD 18.
Okay, I guess that's a
Yeah.
good point. We're gonna vote coming up. After the vote, then we'll be compliant. Thank you. If it passes.
We also don't have to be till, I think it's July of 2027.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got a little bit of time.
After November's vote, if it passes, we're in full compliance. Next, Jim. So I don't really have anything else to really talk about on zoning or land use changes. We've made a lot of progress. The only thing I'll point out, like one of the hurdles that I'm finding with developers is really the cost to doing the developments. I don't know if y'all are about to get into any of that conversation.
Yeah, if you want to
Yeah.
go to the next slide. Hey, so one of the reasons why, one of the spurs to have us come and talk about housing, is that the town has recently gotten a Northern Borders, Regional Commission grant to expand public sewer. And so that is one of the easiest, I say easy, it's incredibly expensive. it's one of the most straightforward ways that you can lessen the cost burden of new development, especially new larger scale residential development. It's also, your sewer district rates are dependent on each one of your ratepayers paying, a total portion of their proportionate usage of the budget. If you have more ratepayers, then you spread that out amongst more people. So that expansion of public sewer has multi-faceted areas of benefits. Some of the town has a few other tools that they can use to help with the cost of housing. Increasingly, there's what's called a tax increment financing district, a TIF. It's a tool that the state allows you to use to locally capture the incremental increased value if a development occurs in exchange for agreeing to basically set a certain project list that you would work on in that development area. That's a way that towns can get some match to meet local match requirements for grants. That's a pretty common way that towns get that funding. And then, like I said, you guys have recently gone after Northern Borders grant funding source. CDBG often has public infrastructure expansion, other facade improvements for downtown business areas. And then one of our most at MCOG, we have just recently gotten two what's called brownfield grants. We have a revolving loan fund and an assessment grant. So that fund will help us region-wide. Say if the town wanted to come to MCOG and do an assessment on a certain piece of property that may have environmental contamination, that assessment could help with figuring out what the contamination is, cleaning up the property, and then redeveloping it for uses like housing or a new business. So several interesting potential tools that the town can utilize for trying to take a chunk out of what is otherwise taxpayer funded expansion to build out housing. We'll do the next. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are several programs here, and you guys will be able to click the links when we send out this this presentation. But on the left side, the top two are programs that Maine Housing runs. One of my favorite is the Community Aging in Place program, and that basically is a no-cost assessment that Maine Housing works through. The local provider that they work with is Penquist, but that's a assessment, basically come into your home, do safety checks, help with minor accessibility upgrades to help you age in place a little better. And then the HARP grant there is a smaller, it's in the realm of $10,000–15,000, but it's a grant that helps with critical repairs, stabilization of a roof, putting in a ramp for your, if you're wheelchair bound now, you weren't formerly, you don't have a wheelchair ramp at your home, and you're income eligible, low income. That's a source of funding that can help with elderly aging in place. USDA does both programs to help maintain and repair homes. They do loans and grants both for that. And then for also, if you're a prospective buyer, they have first-time home buyer grants or loans, pretty low interest rate or no 0% interest rate in some cases. So that works through local banks, but it's a USDA program that's accessible to anyone in a rural area, of which we're in a rural area. Efficiency Maine, some of you may have already taken advantage of that, but that's several rebates for energy assessments, for heat pump upgrades, for hot water heat pump upgrades, basically make it more cost feasible for a homeowner to make those upgrades, and then eventually over time see the benefits of cost savings, of energy savings, for those upgraded systems. And then the last one is just one of the main housings programs, it's pretty popular for a long time, is a mobile home replacement to basically get older pre-1976 mobile homes replaced. It provides some grant assistance and a stabilized low interest loan rate to upgrade to Energy Star efficient mobile homes. Next one. Well, that is our presentation. I'd like to open it up if you guys have questions. One of the questions that I had for you all, just feeling curious, and we kind of ask this question a lot. What's the percentage in the room of homeowners versus renters?
Yes, break it down.
Who's a homeowner?
Yeah,
Who's a homeowner?
who's a homeowner?
Homeowner?
Yeah. And who's a renter? Interesting.
Kind of fun to be here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys have questions you want to ask?
Let's start with you. If you have a question, yeah, ask away. If you don't,
I don't right now.
I talk with a lot of you on a very regular basis, so why don't you ask questions if you have any that are further than what you've already asked. And no question's a bad question. Short answer, Jan.
What I'm trying to learn more about, and actually I've got a really list of them, a lot of people coming Mondays, I'll start with you guys. I hear, I'm on the planning board here. I hear from developers, particularly people that build ADUs in particular, that zoning rules are the devil. That they've never met a land use ordinance that they liked. That there's always more problems than there are solutions. What, do you hear similar things? And I'm trying to figure out, what can we do as a community to ease the process for people without violating really the obligations we have to our residents to maintain the community? Where are the places that developers are having such horrible problems that we can't get anybody to come in and build affordable homes or pretty much any kind of thing except $1 million?
I'm gonna jump real quick. So the ADU ordinance that we have now is very unrestrictive.
I'm not talking about I only used ADUs as an example. I'm talking about building period, not ADUs, but to build low cost housing, to build
Yeah.
units of housing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just cost. What is it now? It's still like 300 something square
No,
foot.
it's more than that.
400?
We're putting 500 to 600 right now.
Okay.
I
mean,
unless you're building at scale, like the new project in Belfast or down in Rockland.
Yep.
That developers collaborative did, and they're around 280 to 320 a foot, but you're building 50 plus units, like that's how you get the cost down.
Yep.
To build 5-6 unit buildings, part of the problem is we have a labor force here that is a great craftsman, which is great. But we don't really have the labor force and the trades that know how to build cheap housing. We just don't have the efficiencies. We don't have the skill set. We don't have enough trades and some product supply to also.
So you what you're saying is that the barriers are not so much in the regulation.
Correct.
As they are in
The town has done an incredible job, especially Rockport, on having a very development-friendly land use ordinance. The state is doing more. We need to figure out how to solve this water and sewer piece because that really unlocks the density piece. However, even if you solve all of that, you have a cost problem. And you have a land cost problem. Because most of our land is being priced as if it was a single family home. And so sellers and the real estate agent community is trying to get top dollar for every piece of land, even if it could be redeveloped. It's very hard when that price is now reflective of $1 million plus home, even if it's not worth that.
Is there any Is Maine in any worse position than anywhere else in the country for those factors?
As far as, lack of development capacity, a lack of developers, I would say we are, you know.
Yeah, and
It's labor and, the cost of construction.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
that and investment capital, because we don't have enough investors that want to back developers in the state.
But are costs of materials more here than they are
Slightly,
in other?
labor, yeah, labor.
Well, no, I'm trying to separate labor from.
Materials are a little bit higher,
Materials are.
because we're the end of we're the end of the road.
You order from Hammond in Camden and Hammond in Augusta, there's two different prices.
That's not the driving thing, though. It's labor.
Labor,
Labor.
And beyond.
yeah, it's all labor.
And in context, so if you're building, say, 1,000 square foot apartment at $500 a square foot, you need to rent that to be profitable at 5,000. If that's it's 1%. So whatever your building costs are, if it's 200,000 a unit, you need to rent that at 2,000 to make any level of profit.
And
For a developer to come in and do it.
And that is the other
Very
problem.
tough.
While our rents are high in comparison to where they have been historically,
Yes.
they are still exceptionally low compared to where the rest of the country is. And so building costs are similar across states. However, rents in Massachusetts or Texas or wherever may be twice as high as they are here.
Are we in trouble for labor, because of lack of apprenticeship programs or?
That's,
49.8 is the median age in Knox County, 49.8.
that's
Yeah.
part of the problem.
Hard to lift drywall. at
Yeah.
49.
But part of the problem we also have is during the Great Recession of 2008, basically all construction shut down in this state across the country. So a lot of people got out of the trades.
Yeah.
So right now, what we don't have are middle managers who know how to run and manage a project.
Okay.
You've got guys who are aging out.
Yeah.
That have all the experience. There's young guys that want to come in, but there's no one to lead them.
Yeah.
And show them how to do it.
Right.
And so that's part of the problem. We need to attract more people into the state that have experience, but we need places for them to live. It's, you know, the egg thing, right? So we don't offer licenses from other states, so we have to fix that at state level too.
Oh.
So that if you do want to come here and you have your license, electrical license, whatever, you need to be able to transfer that license.
Do other states do that? So we
Yeah,
got,
other
we got,
states do, there's rest across the year.
we got a couple other questions. David had a question and there was a question back here and then.
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. One, but numbers heard about cost of construction doesn't surprise me. And I hear it's going way, up and up and up. What I did find interesting was about a year and a half ago, for information, there's a manufactured home dealer out on Route 90 in Warren.
Yep.
And I stopped in there and I said, okay, what do you charge for a house that might be a smaller place but suitable for a family, with 2 or 3 bedrooms? Somebody already has a lot developed, no land thing, is ready to plop down. 18 months ago or so, and as I recall, they were talking in the $80,000 to $150,000 range, which is completely different than,
That's not what I heard when I talked with.
what's that?
When I talked to those guys a couple of years ago, it was for a 2,000 square foot house, it was 400,000.
I didn't say 2,000 square foot. What I said was a small house that would be suitable for a family, not. So that immediately gets into, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a 1,200 square foot house, which when I was a kid, I grew up in a very solid middle class neighborhood and the houses were 1,200 square feet. I understand now that is embarrassing for most people to, you want 3,000, 4,000 square feet. But that's the thing. But that gets to another thing I have, which is, what can the town do if there's a piece of property available? Whoever's selling it's in all likelihood going to want to get what they can, they're going to want to get the most money they can for it. Somebody's going to put a house up, builder, somebody, contractor, whoever's who's doing the house, in all likelihood is going to go for, they're building on spec or they're building something to rent, they're going to aim for, what's most profitable. So there's not, I can see currently incentive in the system to build the less expensive houses.
So one of those, so the land item, the town, this is like right kind of before I started. And, the town manager at the time as he was leaving, there was the talk of like a development corporation for the town. And that would allow the town to be seeded with some money from some avenue. But then it could do just that. It could buy those properties up
Land
or
bank.
land bank.
And there's-
sorts.
there's-
That would be its purpose. I have land to work with a developer to develop for a purpose.
And
So the town, so then,
And then he was saying something.
The Rasmussen said, a lot of those, it all failed, all those small communities. Rockport also, when I built my house,
Mhm.
I was ready, my cousins lived in Lincolnville, and they had a fish house, and they had a lot, and they had wood cook stove. They both worked, and so on, so like, that was their first little house. And then they had kids, and then they sort of added on to it. Well, the town of Rockport, I found I couldn't do that. I had to have the minimum of 600 square feet. Well, that was pretty shocking, because I couldn't get a loan. Fortunately, the people I worked for gave me a loan, and I had a house raising, and I happen to have carpenters in our family. So I had to build a minimum of 600 square feet on the ground floor. It does not include getting up any higher. So 800 square feet, you get to save money on cost of materials. There's less waste on a 24 by 36 foot cave than there is on a smaller cave. That allows it 800 square feet with half a top, 3 bedrooms, very small, and 2 partial bathrooms. Again, 6 by 6 bathrooms. They're not big, but it's there. And you have less waste on certain size housing than others. And when you have less waste, you actually have a greater deal of affordability. All those tract housings out west or down south in Florida and things, they have, they have people that work at $9 an hour, and all they do is do doors, and all they do is windows, and the next guy comes along and does trim. They're not built necessarily extremely well, but that's how they go in and put 400 homes in and build a city.
Mhm.
And that's how the affordability comes in.
Well, so there's two questions. You had your hand up a minute ago. No, okay, back here.
Yeah, one thing that I think would help is if the state and towns agreed on existing plans. So for example, go back to when we built all the schools in Maine 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I was a commissioning agent and every school was custom. So now every architect got to redesign the school. Every mechanical contractor had to rebid a brand new mechanical system. Like what we need to do is have the state have pre-approved 2-unit, 4-unit, 8-unit, 20-unit, single family design A, single family design B. And then the town says, we've adopted all those plans, but we have tweaks that say maybe we need it shingled, maybe we restrict some colors, we don't want vinyl, tweaks. But every contractor then goes, oh, you're building the same cape that I built in South Portland? I'll drive up and build that. I'll drive up and do it. Like it needs to be consistent. Right now, everyone is doing something completely different, which drives up cost, and you have custom high-end labor who says like, oh, I'm just gonna do that. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You can drive and do it. You do
That's
it.
how the national home builders do it. I worked for one of those national home builders and we had 5 plans across the country and you bid it out the same way and that's how you get the cost down.
so what's preventing builders from doing that today? Why does the town need to get involved? Why can't a builder come in and to this area and say, here's my capital,
We don't have those
houses,
builders.
pick the one and build one?
Those builders-
Because what it is so say as a developer, right? So say as a developer, I say, hey, I want to build this 20-unit that's pre-approved in Rockport. You're gonna put that out to bid. Then the builder is gonna go, oh, I've done that bid in other towns. I will drive to work for that developer to build that unit, because I know what I did last time. And then you have 2 or 3 people bidding it, and the guy that did it last time goes, you know what? I made money on that one. I could be a little lower. And he'll work with that developer, and then the developer goes, oh, you know what? That was pretty successful. I could go to another town, and then I could bid it out again, and those builders get used to building that.
So why doesn't that happen today?
We don't have.
We don't have a pre-approved building plan.
No,
We have to.
excuse me, the place where that happens, I lived in Michigan and I watched the big
Yep.
things go in suburban. There was no pre-approved plans, I was involved with that. There were builders that had their own plans and they would build 100 or 200 houses. It's nothing to do with the pre-approved
Because we
plan.
don't have builders in Maine. They don't exist. Those large scale home builders don't exist anywhere in the state because nobody's building large tract subdivisions for one, because they don't
Okay.
have the size land to do it. It's very hard to find 100 acres to build a couple hundred houses on. It doesn't exist in New England. And so that's part of the
But if
problem.
a mom and pop owner, developer, community member wanted to build just that 4 unit for themselves to own and operate, they could tap into that and say, hey, like, I don't have to go and pay for the designs. It's all pre-approved. I think like towns could, agree on a certain set of designs with the state. And just say, hey, like, as a state, we've approved these plans, and those could get bid pretty easily. I bet you could have it at a national level. And even the affordable housing, we still build every affordable housing development is custom. Like, the only people making money on that are all the architects. That's why the cost is like 500,000 a unit in Portland. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And like right now, that's even more than what we're seeing for development is on the affordable housing, is more expensive than market rate. It doesn't make sense. We should just come up with a set of plans that everyone likes, people tweak them, and run that for 10 years.
More multi-family
Yeah.
dwellings. Absolutely.
We are starting to, so in some of our various towns where we're doing comp plan surveys and asking, what would make an ADU easier for you to build? What would make, if you're not a homeowner, what would make it easier for you to build? Time and time again, having pre-approved plans is, one of the top of the list, just A, from a cost perspective, B, from a, incredibly busy person, don't have the time to, or the energy, frankly, to pursue getting a custom design done.
Just a plug, a couple days ago on Main Calling, there was a discussion with some architects about what we're touching on a little bit, not exactly what you guys are talking about, but, and they don't use this term, but I do, like permit by rule, is like an option that, the state DEP does permit by rule. If you want certain types of projects done, you don't have to go and get like all this pre-approval and have all this paperwork. As long as your project meets particular requirements, you can just go get it. You just go do it. You just start building it. And then it becomes an enforcement problem if the builder doesn't comply with the standards. But, I think what they're talking about, which is on sort of a bigger level, is having like almost more state standards that work like that. And on that Main Calling discussion, they were talking about like, the old Sears catalogs and how you could pick a house and all the builders knew how to build them and you could just go and get a house done. And, I think a lot of that was for like single family and smaller homes.
Yeah, but so why that worked is because it was predictable, and then that was all factory built homes. Those Sears homes were factory built, right? In order for a factory to work, you need basically throughput, so you need enough scale to keep the machines running. So there's a prefab modular factory out in Western Maine called KBS, and they are doing this at scale. But if you had the same buildings all over the state and the same plans, they could just bust it out, and their cost will come down drastically. But the problem with any factory or doing any kind of manufacturing process for housing is you need to have enough projects in line to keep that factory running. It's just like a car plant. It's the same concept. And if they sit idle, then they're wasting money and then the costs go through the roof.
Yeah, they talked about that on in the call. I mean, they were talking about timber laminates and putting up a factory for that. But in the context of talking about manufacturing, they had a pretty lengthy discussion about manufactured housing as well. But they talked about it yesterday. It was the 16th. Was that 2 days ago?
Good.
2 days ago. But it's like the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
It's like you need the demand to get the big factory that can do the things, but nobody wants to put the big factory in until they know that the demand exists.
Correct.
And
And
they
then you had a builder, it was like, hey, like I built a couple of these,
Right.
I'm looking to do maybe 24 units in the state in this region, who's looking for one? He's the one saying, I'll build them, and then someone goes,
Yeah.
oh, I'll take one, and then like he's
I just wanted to throw out there, it's not the permitting authority though that's kind of getting in the way of this. It's just the permitting process for housing, we're trying to make as easy as possible. And for single family, two family, like it's pretty smooth. It's really, I think, to what both Ben and David are saying, it's like, it's about, you know, having enough to make it affordable for a builder to want to do it.
Yeah, the way it works, so others understand how this works in other states, is you have land developers and you have builders, and they're sometimes one and the same, but usually separate. And so a land developer will go and say, I'm gonna take 100 acres or 200 or 300 acres, and I'm gonna do a 1,000-unit community, and it's gonna be phased out. And I'm gonna sell off finished lots to builders. So I'm gonna go in and put in the roads, grade everything out, put in all the utilities, and then I'll go sell it to a builder. The builder's gonna come in and he's gonna take them down gradually, and he's gonna build houses, and then they can create, even on site, a manufacturing sort of mentality to be able to get their costs down. Their drywallers show up just in time, the roofers, everyone kind of, and it works that way. But in New England, we don't have that kind of land, and there's no development that occurs that way. It's all done out of the back of a pickup truck primarily. And so to Ben's point, if you had standardized plans and everyone was building those, you kind of create that same idea, but you spread it across the state as opposed to one single community.
But I don't think anybody's gonna be prepared to have this Rockport say this is the only thing you can build. There needs to be, the customers want that.
No, he's not saying only thing.
Yeah,
It's
no,
all
I know.
whatever you want.
I'm not arguing against the concept of standardized plans. I'm just saying, you know, how do we get builders to, how do you get that? And don't try to force it on people. How do you get people to want it? So somebody looks around and they say, gee, I want to buy a house. I can't afford, you know, house I want's going to be $500,000 to get the custom house. Oh, I can settle for this house, equivalent to the subdivision house in the big subdivisions you're talking
You worry
about.
about the
For 350, I'll take that. So where's the builder that's gonna offer that?
are you worried about the builder or the tenant taking that? Which one are you worried about? The builder? If,
I'm saying the builder offering that, you know,
yeah, so if a builder, say if a builder has a dry spell and they go, hey, anyone looking for a unit, you know, 4A, like that I can build, and then like someone will go, hey, I'll take one of those. Because they're at a dry spell, they're at a discount or a deal falls apart.
Yeah.
Or it really works on higher density, there's 4-plex, 6-plex, 8-plex, where those aren't being built anywhere right now. And so if you had an off-the-shelf thing, now all of a sudden, a builder could say, I could do 10 of the projects spread across the mid-coast, now I can get my cost down because I can do 10 of the same thing.
so I think, to me, when it comes to affordable housing, the question is, whatever term you wanna use, you know, get the cost of housing down, it's what can from the town standpoint, what can the town do to promote that? And I'm not sure there's a lot of levers the town has available to pull.
Correct, I think that's what we were saying, I think the town has done a lot of what it can do at this point.
Yeah,
And now it's up to the market and the state, there's some things the state can do.
yeah.
And one of Orion mentioned development corps earlier. One of the recent developments at the state level is that we have the Maine Redevelopment Land Bank Authority. And that's an interesting resource that we haven't really tapped into yet, but it has its own source of funding that spins off from our tipping fees when they go to, and trash gets shipped to landfills. And so towns working with the Redevelopment Land Bank Authority, they offer lightning grants that stabilize properties. The land bank will take on tricky properties and hold them and stabilize them, work with the community. So that's an interesting tool that we're just kind of diving into that I'm optimistic about.
So I just have a question for the broader group, which is sort of, there are affordable housing complexes going in Rockland. There's a bunch of them. Developers Collaborative is down there. And so the question I have, and I have my own assumed answer for this, but like, why are they able to put those in Rockland? And why haven't we attracted that kind of development here, other than the fact that like Kevin Bunker grew up in Rockland? Yeah,
An existing shell. They're putting apartments upstairs and underwriting the main housing, and then they're getting the commercial space downstairs.
Yeah.
As like outside their plans.
Mhm.
So it's like, that's that part that generates the income is the downstairs commercial space outside of the affordable housing money that's upstairs. So they get the shell done, they get the free shell, the apartments, and then they have this, future moneymaker in the commercial.
Do you guys know what Rockland's share would be of the new housing needed? Because I know you kind of broke it out for Rockport, the total amount. Do you have any idea?
I did it for, our last gaps analysis, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I haven't updated it for this one. It's roughly double to triple, I wanna say.
Yeah, so even what Rockland's adding is still just about what they need to.
Yeah, they have to.
They need significantly more housing
Yeah.
than what they've even got going.
Every one of those projects was a redevelopment of an existing shell, which once again,
Except for
the 12 units is added.
Peasley Park.
Oh, easily, yeah.
So this might be just community gossip, but what is the status on our sewer expansion project? Cause the town voted no, pretty close vote.
Well, okay, so there was a sewer infill project that got
Right.
voted yes, and that one's underway. I think the construction will begin, I don't think it'll begin this year, it'll begin spring of next year. So that's just taking care of some gaps that
Right,
were
yeah.
there. Some.
No, but at the town, although there was the sewer expansion,
For the treatment plant?
yes, for the treatment plant. And then it was, what I remember is, what my understanding of the many things I voted on was in total, the community voted no on the treatment plan, taking the loan out for the treatment plan.
Mhm.
But they also voted to have a citizen commission to look into it.
Mhm.
Where are we at in that? When do we vote again?
I know that the resolution with Camden, that whole dispute has been settled and that issue's gone. But we still have the rate that they set for us.
Right,
And there's a cap limitation, so no matter what, we're limited on our growth
right.
because of the agreement that we have with Camden.
So the question.
But my question, sorry, yeah, my question is, I thought that there was a group of people, citizens, because the government was not to be trusted. Group of citizens who were evaluating the new treatment plan.
Okay.
And
Are you talking-
that was like-
Just to work out a deal with Camden.
That was just. to
Yeah,
work out
that's
the
what the
treatment plan.
citizen group was.
Okay,
So I don't,
so they're done with
and
their,
I don't think there's any plan next to say, okay, how do we increase capacity, whether it's in Camden or it's in Rockport or it's in Rockland,
oh,
right?
so the treatment facility failed and it is not gonna be re-raised,
Correct.
as far as we know. Like building
What do you mean?
Rockport building their own treatment facility next to the hospital land.
Oh, that isn't being considered right now.
That's not being
Well, I can't say that it won't be revisited
Okay,
because there are limitations in how much we can send our flow to either plant, Camden
okay,
or Rockland. So at some point,
yeah, we may have, okay,
where it's either we're done and taxes are just gonna
Camden
continue.
expands theirs and allows us to send one.
Yeah,
yeah.
and then we're
But they-
saying the same
Be a
thing.
water ocean access treatment plant. I
Sorry?
mean, what does people do in the middle of the state? Can
As-
we do it out in the outer land? Yeah, away from.
Yeah, a lot of them, they put it in rivers. So, there's rivers, there's some irrigation systems there's some irrigation systems that people do use, but you need a swath of land to do that on.
Yeah, that exists in Thomaston, actually, they spray
Yep.
in Thomaston Town Forest,
That's why you get PFAS too.
well, back in the day. Yeah.
So, yeah. The easiest, I can't remember all the exact detail, but it's, the better option is to do the discharge into the ocean after the treatment plant. So
But that wasn't the local issue, really, was the cost.
it was the cost.
Yeah.
It was a big
Right.
cost.
Yeah.
So,
And that was, yeah, but as someone who voted yes on the cost, I don't know where this room fell, so I will out myself, as someone who voted yes and who wanted growth and who wanted that infrastructure and wanted it to be owned by my town, not dependent on another town. I was hoping that it would come back around, but
I think if it comes back around, it needs to come back around as in the whole town shares in the cost rather than the ratepayers. That would be the other, I think.
that there was the individuals fell through, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was dependent on future growth.
But I have no sewer.
Yeah, it was dependent on the Route 90 line growing enough to offset the cost of that. It wasn't an additional burden for the existing ratepayers.
Right.
However, if
There
the
was
whole
no
town, if the whole town were to pay for it, then that sort of goes away. You're all basically banking on the immediate growth. But it becomes a potential property tax burden, and you hope that you can add more lots and more business to offset the property tax burden. That's kind of what you need to convince people to vote for.
And ownership. That's another ownership cost.
Mhm.
You got a septic, you've got that initial cost that you put in, like you're building a home or an apartment, whatever it is, there's your initial cost. And then it's there for so many years and quite for decades before you have to rebuild it. Otherwise, that's a continuous add-on ownership cost per month, per quarter. I know I've been paying it for 25 years and I have a septic system. I live up in the woods. So, that's another cost of ownership, and it's gone from $36 up to 70 some odd dollars. I get no joy out of that. But it would cost $50,000 to hook in. I live
Oh, you
700
mean.
feet off of the highway.
Gotcha, I got you,
Yeah.
yeah. Sewer's expensive. I know the ordinance that's on the ballot right now, just to kind of give, so the sewer ordinance that's being amended, it's changing a little bit on it to get at aims of bringing that user rate down. We're gonna see how well that truly works, but the debt service, you'll see a little bit of, which is what you pay, the debt service portion of it.
Yeah, I
There'll be a
was the
little bit
chairman
of-
of the board when that went in and was supposed to be only for 20 years. And then they liked having the money so much, they continued it and it continued to get more and more. So
Yeah.
it is a little bit of a bane when you pay for something that you have no joy in. And there was only 12 of us.
Mhm. I understand.
I can become the most hated person in the room. I worked on both sewer and the ordinance. So my hands are dirty. So there's no joy.
But it's, yeah,
There
it's
is
very
no-
difficult putting
there
that
is
burden on only 12 families in the entire town.
There is no easy solution, and the solution will only get more complicated. And the infrastructure that exists is not getting younger,
No, it's not.
and there's not an easy solution. So it's like everything else. At some point, we all have to say this is a need or it stops. There's only so much we can send. And would we have an opportunity to build or help build in Rockland or in Camden? Sure, but then how much are you willing to pay for them to build their facilities?
Well, I want to pay
And
for it now.
but it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So it's always, unfortunately, it's a very expensive proposition. Sewers are. And can it be done differently? I don't know. It's to be explored. I think your
I think
question
this
is,
is idea is kind of an interesting
Yeah, it is.
concept.
it is.
I think, yeah.
And there's more of that. I mean, I think the state stepped up and could figure out some plug and play solutions for towns on how to do sewer, so that not every town has to design it themselves. Now, geography is gonna be different in every town. However, there are certain things that could be consistent across town that the state can step in. And the state could often come up with a program to order all the pipes so that all the towns could come into one fund,
Sure.
right?
And I mean, that's another good point. So Rockland has far more sewer users, but they have less than 10 pump stations. Rockport has 22 pump stations. So they just do it our geography. So those
And
are
we have
awesome to
maintained them.
maintain.
So Ryan, do you know how many houses, if we added them, would hit the sewer capacity cap for Camden?
Yes, not off the top of my head, but I have run.
Is that like within the realm of what we're
Yeah,
talking?
so our sewer engineer, well, because we have two lines, so, Rockland line, there's not really a capacity limitation right now, but they've got their own future growth, we come second. So with that in mind, there's capacity limitation. On the Camden line, we do have that number in mind, our sewer engineers there in talks with the potential developers coming. So we kind of have an idea of when we kind of need to say stop. So, yes. And that agreement, I think we start in 2 years to I think it's like a 5-year agreement with Camden.
Camden?
Mhm. So,
Yeah, we're into the first of the first 2 years that are gonna be monitored, and there's 5-year agreement.
right, but at the end of the 2-year, they begin the negotiations for the next agreement
That's correct,
or, suggestions of Rockport finding.
Right, how many planning units are, how many units are we planning right now? If they were all to be built, and if you were to describe a percentage of how many get built of that total?
Well, so we got 10 that just got approved, so we'll count that into this number. There's another in this area that's in the 20s, 20s to 30s, somewhere in there, but that's like an apartment complex slash single family homes.
Yeah.
Kind of development. So in total, that right there is about 40, 50 units.
Do
If
you
we
think
can
they
do
all,
it.
do you think they all get built?
Yes, I think they will get built. There's another potential development, still kind of in the area, but that one, I don't know yet. The money is there. I just don't know if they want to pursue it just yet. So yes, there's housing coming. People want to be here, but those houses, those, on this chart, that's not gonna be our force.
Yeah.
That's still not the workforce. I mean, it's still the workforce in terms of like the jobs available for this particular area, but the workforce to keep your, restaurants open longer.
Well, and
kind of stuff.
that's the other thing, to build what's considered attainable housing, workforce housing, like, it all has to be subsidized. So there is another piece where the state needs to step in, and those funds are limited because the entire state's trying to tap into them, and the state budget is less. And the federal money is not coming for that anymore either, so, that's also.
$100 million in debt, right? The state,
I don't know.
$500 million as it was or something recently. Deficit they had on this
Yeah.
last budget.
Okay. Well, I want to thank y'all for coming out and part of this discussion. We don't have another date picked just yet, but we're gonna kind of keep these conversations going a little bit. So I might send out some information if y'all want to discuss a particular item, and then, we can kind of build the next one around that.
Yeah.
So,
Please give us feedback if you have, if you have ideas for other formats of discussion, like, we're open to being flexible.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you guys for coming.
yeah,
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank Makepeace Council of Governments. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, y'all have a good one.